Hello guys, welcome back. I have a little bit of a different video for you guys today. So I am going to be teaching you exactly how I got the little fringe on this Vulpix pattern. So this Vulpix pattern kind of originated from Twitch, where I stream my pattern process live. And so this little fringe is kind of what we're going to be going over today, except we're going to be doing it on different characters. So currently I'm working on a pattern for this Eevee, and I'm going to be showing you and going over exactly how I achieved this effect. Just beware that, you know, this does cause a lot of fluff and a lot of pieces that, you know, fly away. So if you are sensitive to fibers and stuff like that, this might not be a good technique for you. But I've gotten a lot of questions on exactly how I do this. So I thought I'd take you guys through that today, just in the process of how we do Eevee. Please mind the face is not done yet, and also the legs are not done yet. So listen, we'll get there. If you want to grab a coffee, some bean juice, if you will, and hang out with me, I'd love that. Okay, so let's get started. So you can see that I've already started on this side. There's a lot of fiber that we're gonna have to use for this piece, but I thought I'd just take you guys along and show you guys exactly how I achieved this effect. Obviously this is a little bit long, but we'll have to trim it at the end. So we're gonna need a wire brush. I have this old cat brush from the dollar store that I picked up. It's got really stiff bristles, which helps with brushing out that yarn. The next thing that we're gonna need is like a felting needle. So I have this one that's kind of bent now, but you don't even need like this big contraption. You just need essentially the felting needle. Sometimes they come in kits with little sponges or foam with them, but essentially they're just like needles with little chunks taken out of them, just so we can adhere those yarn pieces to the actual piece. We are also gonna need some scissors. I like these teeny tiny scissors. We're gonna need a old flat iron. I pretty much just use a very low setting. You don't want it too hot when you're doing this, because you can melt the yarn, especially if you're using acrylic, which is what I recommend for doing this. So I just have mine at a very low setting. It's off right now, but mine's just in between 80 and 110 usually. And then we're gonna need our yarn. So for the Eevee project, I'm gonna be using Paintbox Simply Aran, and that is an acrylic yarn, and it's also a size 4 yarn. So to start, we're gonna need a whole bunch of little pieces of yarn. So depending on your project, you'll need different lengths of yarn, but I kind of like to stick around a couple inches in length. So something like this. I can always make them longer or shorter, but a lot of the times when I'm brushing out this yarn, it will get, it'll take off a whole bunch of fiber and I won't be able to use like half of it. So I usually like to keep it around that length, and I'll be folding it in half to do this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut up a whole bunch of pieces, just varying lengths. You don't really need to be too accurate with this, but we're gonna need quite a few. And depending on what you're using it for, you may need more, you may need less. Just cut as many as you need to get a good start. And one by one, we're gonna be brushing them out. So to brush them out, I take it and I fold it in half, and then I hold it on the ends. So we now take the brush, and now we can start to brush it out. I like to start at the very ends, because if we start too high up, it starts to get a little bit bunchy and we can't even try and brush it out. So these don't even have to be lined up either, as long as you kind of have tails on one side and then the middle on the other. And then I just start to brush it all out. And it'll give you like this. And that's exactly what we need. And then you can also see I'm kind of collecting a whole bunch of fiber in here. And that's totally fine. That's gonna happen. You're gonna take off a ton of fiber with this method. So we're just gonna go along, brush out all the way up to the very top. Just like that. So this part will be mostly unbrushed, because that's where your fingers are holding it, but just go up as high as you can, trying to get it nice and straight. So that's one of them. So now I'm gonna do the rest of them. I'm just gonna brush out all of them there, and then I'm gonna put them off to the side, and then we'll move on to our next step. So this usually takes a little while to slowly but surely brush them out, but you know, the good things take time. So now that I am completely all brushed out of all these pieces, I have like this much of fiber just left over from brushing it out. This is not unusual. You'll also might need to dust or vacuum or something else because it gets everywhere. And then I'm gonna start bulking it up onto the Eevee that I have. And I'm just gonna take the felting needle and start poking it right into the places that I want a little bit more bulk. So next, I need to turn on my flat iron. I never have it on all the time just because I feel like I'm gonna burn something. But so I'll turn it on and it doesn't take long to heat up, and I'll just start it around somewhere in between 80 to 110 there. So just be a little extra careful about, you know, not putting it too hot. Don't burn yourselves, okay? So now that it's hot enough, I can kind of feel it on the outside of it, but it's like not too hot that I can't touch it. So all we're gonna do is we're just gonna press it down and start flat ironing it. And immediately it turns quite straight. Make sure that we're holding it at that little braided section there and flat iron all the way down. Easy peasy. And then we're just gonna go along and do that with each and every one of them. So I'm just gonna start by poking that braided or the twisted part directly onto the piece. And sometimes I'll just poke a few pokes all the way down, following that line that I already put out for myself. So this kind of just gives me a little bit of a border. And then I'll work from underneath to over top. And then I want to make sure that I'm felting it into like where I want that line to be. Where's the cutoff of that felt? So the cutoff for me is right underneath the chin area and pretty much where the line of my previous felting is. So this you can see is kind of like, I don't know, it's got a whole bunch of lines and stuff in them. So now I like to take the brush back and I'll just brush it back out again. And this is also where I lose a lot of fiber. So I try and just collect it so it doesn't blow everywhere. And to kind of make sure, because if I move it apart, like I can see all that grossness underneath that I don't want to show. I'll just do a couple of pokes around just to kind of stick it in one direction. And that's a little bit better, but it looks like we're gonna need a whole bunch more pieces just to give it a little bit more volume, which is totally expected. We're gonna essentially just repeat that process over and over again until we get the right amount of pieces and we finish felting it in. It just takes a very long time. But I think I am mostly happy with this. I might have to go back at the end when I've put everything all together again and maybe add a few more pieces. But I think for right now, where I am in this project, I think I'm just gonna leave it as is. And then so I can show you exactly how I cut the piece. To do this, I'm just gonna use our scissors again. And essentially, I'm just gonna try and take off a little chunk at the part where you think that there's too much or you want like your longest part to be. And then you're gonna just kind of give it a haircut and then kind of snip a little bit above too and just go upwards to give it a little bit more texture. I'll take off a few off the top. I just want a little bit of variety in the length of it, just because I feel like it looks better. So all that I'm doing is I'm just switching between trimming the hairs and then going to the felting needle and positioning them in the right space, and then brushing it back out again, and then just constantly evaluating the shape and the texture of the piece. So I think I'm happy with this kind of pattern, this style. Once I start to add the details onto Evie, such as the eyes or the tail, I know this is gonna get messed up again, so I'll definitely have to revisit. And then, yeah, this is kind of how I do all of my fringes now, just because it looks so shiny, so pretty, and it definitely gives your amigurumi an added boost after, of course, you take out literally so much fiber from your lungs. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a bit of an idea on exactly how I do the little fluffy bits on my pieces. They come out great every single time. They just take a lot of time to cut all the pieces, brush out all the pieces, but it's definitely worth it in the end. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.